interesting video that's been circulating YouTube, pretty new. It's got now about 2.5 million views or close to it, and it's by Youssef Erekat, otherwise known as FauciTube. You may follow him. He has a lot of subscribers. But it basically is asking the question, how would you react if a homeless man offered you money? Take a look.
What?
God bless. I'm just trying to help out.
I don't need your money, you asshole. I can buy you.
I'm just trying to help you out today. I don't need help.
Mate, piss off, man.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. Get yourself breakfast.
I want to lend a helping hand.
You know what? I have a few dollars. Why don't you take more and make me feel rich for the day? Thank you. Have a good day. Go get breakfast.
You're going to give me that?
Yeah, all that, man. Just because this message, man. It's so positive.
And I just want to give back to you.
Oh, okay. Well, let me give you something. You see that? That's a Benz. You got to earn your way up, pal.
That was the most pretentious thing I've heard today, and I've been doing this all day.
Thank you. See you class, baby.
Wow. Yeah, all right. So if you are having the same response that I am to this video, I think the first thing, and I hate to do this because I'm not one of those people in the YouTube comments, but literally the first thing that pops into my head is fake.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, as I'm watching this, I really feel like these might be actors.
Really?
All of the assholes have their faces blurred. All of the nice people, I suppose, signed a release. I don't think this guy cares about releases. And yeah, it feels a bit acty. Our producer, Arena, earlier said something along the lines of, this was filmed in LA. Everybody's wearing business suits. There isn't a single hipster anywhere in the
video.
That's
a good point. And there's no hipsters.
Exactly. Which is, I think, yeah, kind of telling. That being said, whether these are actors or not, I think the message is the same of the video.
Oh yeah, I think it definitely shows how different people would react in this situation. And you know, let's, you know, take it away from the idea of whether these are actors, because unfortunately we can't determine that one way or the other, but we can look at the social commentary that it offers. You know, the rich guy who says, "Fuck you, asshole." I mean, really? If that would be a genuine reaction, then I would be shocked and amazed. I was sort of surprised that anybody would have that kind of reaction to it. But you know, and it's as if he were insulted that somebody was actually trying to bring up a nice idea, like hey, I'll give you money instead, and I can buy you. That's the kind of person. Obviously, it would reveal more about that kind of guy who says such a thing.
Completely, and I don't think it is a fair assessment to say that anybody with money is going to react like this.
Well, no, I don't think it did.
To a homeless person, I think it was edited that way.
Yeah, it was edited to show the wide variety,
the range,
you know. And
sure.
so you had the nice young woman who said who was touched by the idea and said, you know, here's this money and please go get yourself some breakfast. And I thought that was a really touching response from her.
But according to the producer, only 2 people did that. Really? Only that woman and that man across the street who he offered to pay his meter to, and everybody else reacted kind of aggressively,
which is
as
surprising.
if it was insulting to them that somebody who's generally associated with asking for money would be offering money.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that's that old famous saying, you know, that your real test of character is how you react when you are interacting with somebody who can't do anything for you. You know, that when there's nobody watching, do you react well when there's no one watching? And you know, if these are to be taken at face value, then these people don't react very well when somebody is watching them and they just don't know it.
And they
turn out to be actual, you know, jerks.
But I think that point that you made is important because I think those are almost 2 different things. So talking about how somebody's going to react when nobody's watching, which is an, you know, age-old kind of question, and then this idea of how are people going to react when they don't have anything to gain from this interaction? You know what I mean? Like, some people might argue that altruism is a real thing, that people do good deeds for the sake of doing them. Other people might argue that they do good deeds because it gives them some sort of
they do get something out of it, that positive experience.
Exactly, and that means that at its core, it's still a selfish act. But regardless of which one of those is true, this just goes to show that some people don't feel good when they're helping somebody else, which is kind of a huge bummer.
Well, I think that there's, you know, a lot more of this, you know, we were talking about income inequality in the first hour, and I think because our society, especially here in America, has gotten a little bit more coarse over the last several decades. You know, it used to be that it was a national an actual national concept that we would care for the poor, and that we actually had a responsibility to help to care for the poorest among us and provide a safety net. And that has been slowly eroded away over the last 3 or 4 decades, as this idea that the poor are undeserving and therefore they're just trying to, cheat and steal, and they're not actually like put there because of, institutional racism, for example, or institutional barriers to them succeeding.
And that it's somehow, we're all on an even playing field. It's somehow a choice that individuals, like people have chosen to be homeless.
Like there's an equality of opportunity, which there is not in
exactly.
the United States.
And what this seems to be is kind of a hyper-real American dream scenario. So this idea of the American dream that, everybody gets an equal piece of the pie, this, every person that lives here is exceptional, and that somehow there's enough to go around so that we could all be rich one day, is, I think, a staunch conservative ideal that's become more and more carved out and less realistic as the years go by. And so what you end up seeing is this huge rift between the rich and the poor, the middle class falling out completely. And because of that, more and more people on the bottom. I recently did a story for KCET for a show I work on there called SoCal Connected, where I went to the Santa Clarita Valley and I interviewed some homeless folks who live in the riverbed there. And it was just astonishing to me, this main character that I followed named Mike. He worked at Lockheed for 27 years. He had a wife, he had kids. He
had a career.
He had a full-on career. When he lost his job because of a workplace injury, and then things got bad at home, and then he started drinking, and then it just kind of went downhill for him, and he hasn't been able to get back on his feet. And I think that this story is becoming more and more common. On a separate interview I did there about the police in that same area, I was interviewing a cop while we were doing a ride-along, and he was like, my commander used to always say to me, we're only one crisis away from being homeless, being out on the street.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's true.
And our policies that we have right now don't actually help a lot of people in that last, you're one car accident, you're one illness away from total bankruptcy, like, this particular guy that you interviewed.
Healthcare, the banking system, all of these things actually penalize the poor. These are places where the rich can make more money and where the poor are actually facing, larger interest rates, larger penalties.
Predatory lending.
And oftentimes it just perpetuates the cycle of poverty.
And this demonizing of the poor that sort of happened, I think, over the last several decades, making it sound like they're trying to cheat, that to me is where we've seen this unraveling come about. It's exacerbated by the Great Recession in 2008, where so many people were laid off, especially people in their 40s and 50s that were going to have a much harder time recovering their middle class lifestyle. Losing
people that
their
were
homes.
very traditionally middle class.
Yeah, and basically followed all the rules and themselves were kicked out on the streets because of all of the mismanagement of the crisis itself, allowing banks to foreclose on their homes without having the right kind of paperwork, for which, no one was really ever prosecuted. Nobody went to jail for that. There were...
and the victims were blamed across the board. It was like, well, why are you trying to buy a house you
why
can't afford?
Did you do that?
And it's like, well, the bank told me I could afford it. And granted, yes, I think we've got to talk about personal responsibility in the equation, but at the same time, putting all of that onus on these individuals and kind of, like you said, I think that's a great phrase, demonizing the poor. You know what? It's not very Christian. But it's a very conservative thing to do, isn't it? And I feel like maybe the New Testament needs to be read a couple of times.